Hi there. Today is Thursday, March the 2nd, 2023, and I've been doing some researching, and I was looking at a very interesting bit of work. So it's a book that was had several different titles. One was the Theurgia, also known as the Mysteriis Aegyptiorum, translation, the Egyptian Mysteries. It was known as D. Mysteriis, and it was also known as On the Mysteries of the Egyptians, Chaldeans, and Assyrians. Okay? Now, I was looking for, a free PDF of this, and I found a few different ones. They're different translations for different time periods. And the one that I'm looking at here is called Theurgia, or the Egyptian Mysteries by Emblicus. So there was a letter from a person named Porphyry to Enibo. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation, sorry. And then we see the replies from the teacher. So he's got some very interesting questions, and I thought, you know what, this is a really interesting read. So let's do it, okay? Let me see. Okay, so it has a whole bunch of contents. Contents are 1, the letter of Porphyry to Enibo, and then number 2, the reply of Abamon, and then number 3 is about the superior races. The 4 is rites, symbols, and offerings. 5 is the superior races and their manifestations. 6, the order exhibited at the rites. 7, origin of the art of divination. 8, the divining art universal. 9, demons. That's my particular favorite. 10, concerning the powers invoked. 11, he's answering these questions that this other person was asking. Number 12, notions of priests criticized. 13, concerning the mystic rites. 14, conditions for successful results. 15, origin of Egyptian symbolism. 16, questions proposed. 17, the personal demon. And then 18 is eudaimona, or the true success. And the last one is valedictory. So the translator's note here, it says the aim is to express the original, the whole original, and nothing but the original, and withal good, readable English. And that's kind of why I chose this particular translation, because it seemed to me that it was very workmanlike. There was no embellishing. He's got notes off to the side. It's really thorough. It seemed very workmanlike, he didn't seem to be embellishing, so that's why I went with that one. And again, that was done in 1911. And I do prefer some of the older ones because, of course, as you, as they become, I think I saw one that was from like 2003 or something. It's like, I'm not reading that. It's probably been so polluted by that point. The older stuff is usually better. All right, so Porphyry to the prophet Enibo, greetings. I will begin this friendly correspondence with thee, with a view to learning what's believed in respect to the gods and good demons, and likewise the various philosophic speculations in regard to them. Very many things have been set forth concerning these subjects by the Grecian philosophers, but for the most part have derived the substance of their belief from conjecture. So now he's got a bunch of questions. 1, the gods and their peculiarities. And sorry, one quick second here. Let me see, where does that come in? Give me a sec. Okay, I'm not sure, so I'm going to just quickly look at the notes here. So you want to know who Porphyrius is? He was a distinguished scholar and the foremost writer in the later Platonic school, and he was a native of Tyre, and his name Molech, or king, was rendered by Longinus into Porphyrios, denoting the royal purple. He was a disciple of Plotinus, who broadened the field of philosophic study till it included the wisdom of the East. And in personal habits, he followed the Pythagorean discipline. He was a severe critic of the Gnostic beliefs that were then current. He evidently included with them also the new Christian faith. And his mysticism was spiritual and contemplative. And he regarded the ceremonial rites of the Egyptian theurgy with distrust. He favored Mithraism, which prevailed in Asia. Okay, and of Anebo, the guy who's asking the questions of, it says, we know little. He's addressed as an Egyptian priest, and his name is that of Anubu or Anubis, patron of sacred literature. He was a prophet or servant of divinity, expounder of the oracles. And Porphyry himself was an initiated person, asking him accordingly to explain the Egyptian theosophic doctrines respecting the divine beings, rites, and religious faith. Okay? So, 1. The gods and their peculiarities. In the first place, therefore, it is to be taken for granted that there are gods. I ask then, what are the peculiarities of the superior races, by which they are differentiated from each other? Are we to suppose the cause of the distinction to be their energies, or their passive motions, or things consequent? Or is it a classification established by difference of bodies, the gods being distinguished by ethereal bodies, the demons by aerial bodies, and souls by bodies pertaining to the earth? As the gods dwell in heaven only, I ask, therefore, why are invocations of the theurgic rites directed to them as being of the earth and the underworld? How is it that, although possessing power unlimited, undivided, and unrestricted, some of them are mentioned as being of the water and of the atmosphere, and that others are allotted by definite limitations to different places and to distinct parts of bodies? If they're actually separated by circumscribed limitations of parts, and according to diversities of places and subject bodies, how will there be any union of them one to another? How can the theosophers, this is from the notes, it says the theosophers were regarded as learned in the arcane knowledge, and especially in theurgy. Okay, and it seems like Iamblichus appears to have adopted these rites and usages from the Egyptian worship, including with them a philosophic groundwork from the Platonic doctrines. Okay? So, how can the theosophers consider them as impressionable? He's talking about the gods. For it's said that on this account, phallic images are set up, and that immodest language is used at the rites. Well, certainly, if they are impassive and unimpressionable, the invocations of the gods, announcing favorable inclinations, propitiations of their anger, and expiatory sacrifices, and still further, what are called necessities of the gods, would be utterly useless. For that which is impassive is not to be charmed or forced or constrained by necessity. Why then are many things performed to them in the sacred rites as to impressionable beings? The invocations are made as to gods that are impressionable beings, so that it is implied that not the demons only are impressionable, but the gods likewise, as was declared in Homer. Quote, even the gods themselves are yielding. End quote. Suppose then we say, as certain individuals have affirmed, that the gods are pure mental essences, and that the demons are psychic beings participating of mind. All right, so when we look at the notes from that one, they're talking about Xenocrates, who was a disciple of Plato, and he himself taught these doctrines. He considered the heavens as divine, and that the substance of the divine nature was mind, pure and absolute. An intelligent like universe, basically. He also describes the stars as visible divinities. The demons were depicted as of a psychic nature, subordinate to that of the gods, and therefore subject to emotion and perturbation like human beings, while at the same time sharing in a degree in the power and intelligence of the gods. All right, so that's interesting. Okay. The fact remains, nevertheless, that the pure mental essences are not to be charmed or mingled with things of sense, and that the supplications which are offered are entirely foreign to this purity of mental substance. But on the other hand, the things that are offered as to sensitive and psychic natures. Are gods then separated from demons by the distinction of bodied and unbodied? If, however, only the gods are incorporeal, how shall the sun, the moon, and the visible luminaries in the sky be accounted as gods? How is it that some of them are givers of good and others bring evil? What is the bond of union that connects the divinities in the sky that have bodies with the gods that are unbodied? The gods that are visible in the sky being included in the same category with the invisible, what distinguishes the demons from the visible, and likewise the invisible gods? Now, that's just the first question, and he's got a whole bunch of them. I think that it would be more interesting here to, we're going to jump to his reply, okay? Let's see now, where does it pick up? All right, so part 1, the gods and their peculiarities, and this is the reply from the teacher. So he says, Hermes, the patron of literature, was rightly considered of old to be a god common to all the priests. Okay, so who's Hermes? Hermes is here the same as the Egyptian divinity Thoth, or Tahuti, god of learning and medicine. He was regarded as the scribe or recorder who registered the actions of the dead and living so that they were judged out of those things that were written in the books. He was also the revealer of the divine will to men. And let's see. So Hermes, the patron of literature, is rightly considered of old to be a god common to all the priests. And the priests in Egypt consisted of many orders, including those who performed the rites, the learned profession, which included prophets, philosophers, poets, authors, physicians, artists, master mechanics, and also embalmers of the dead. All right, so considered of old to be a god common to all the priests, and the one presiding over the genuine learning relating to the gods, one and the same among all. Hence, our predecessors were wont to ascribe to him their discoveries in wisdom, and to name all their respective books of Hermes. Okay, so Hermes is Thoth. If therefore we participate in this god. Just looking at the notes here. Okay, so there's a note right here. It says, this form of expression extends through this entire book. Though hardly familiar to us, it was formerly common in philosophic writings, the gods being spiritual essences. It was very properly considered that their worshippers would participate in their substance, as we partake of the air that we breathe. In this way, their powers and virtues were supposed to be imparted to the recipients. This treatise accordingly mentions the gifts received by the people initiated as participating of the gods. The fact that they represent or personify qualities rather than individualities makes this mode of speaking eminently proper. All right. Let's see now. Where do we go here? Okay. If therefore we participate in this God of the measure which has fallen to us and become possible to us, thou dost well to propose these questions in regard the divine sciences to the priests as to friends for an accurate solution. It's interesting right there. They're calling it the divine science, right? And then somewhere along the way, and this is me making a comment, somewhere along the way, divine science became like, astrology and psychic stuff and spirituality, and it was divorced from what we know today as science. But really, the two were meant to go together. That's kind of what I'm thinking. But anyway, I'll try not to interject too much. Having good reason, therefore, for considering the letter sent by thee to Nebo, my pupil, as having been written to myself, I will answer thee truly in regards to the matters about which thou hast inquired. For it would not be becoming that Pythagoras, Plato, Democritus, Eudoxus, and many others of the old Greeks should have obtained competent instruction from the temple scribes of their own time, but that thou, who art contemporary with us, having the same disposition as they, should be turned away by those now living and recognized as public teachers. So he's saying, I'm really more of your contemporary, so I'm just going to answer you myself. Accordingly, I myself engage thus in the present discussion. Thou, if thou dost so choose, are at liberty to consider the person who is now writing to thee as the same individual to whom thou hast sent thy letter. If, however, it shall seem to thee more proper, then regard the individual who is discoursing with thee in writing to be one or some other prophet of the Egyptians, for this is not a matter worth differing about. Or, as I think still a better way, let it pass unnoticed whether the person speaking is of inferior or superior rank, and direct your attention solely to the things that are uttered, thus arousing the understanding to eagerness simply as to whether that which is said be true or false. In the first place, let us take the subjects separately in order to ascertain the scope and quality of the problems which are now proposed for discussion. Next, let us examine in detail the theories respecting divine matters from which your doubts were conceived, and make a statement of them as to the sources of knowledge by which they will be investigated. Some which are badly jumbled together require to be taken apart, while others have relation to the divine cause through which everything exists, and so are readily apprehended. Others, which we might put forward according to a certain plan of exhibiting contradictory views, draw out the judgment in both directions, and there are likewise some which demand from us to explain the whole of the initiatory rites. Such being the facts, our answers are to be taken from many places and from different sources of knowledge. Some of these introduce fundamental principles from the traditions which the sages of the Chaldeans delivered. Others derive support from the doctrines which the prophets of the Egyptian temples teach. And some of them follow closely the speculations of the philosophers and elicit the conclusions which belong to them. And now there are some of these which involve an unbecoming dispute from diverse notions that are not worthy of a word, and others that have their origin from prejudices common to human beings. All these, therefore, are to be disposed of in various ways by themselves, and are in many ways connected with one another. Hence, on account of all these things, there is some discussion necessary for the directing of them properly. Plan of the discussion. We will therefore set forth to thee the hereditary opinions of the Syrian sages, and there's a note there. Okay, it says, it's evident that there was a gnosis or sacred doctrine common to the religions of the principal countries, and that its focus was at Babylon. Okay, in regard to the true knowledge, and will show thee in plain terms our own. Some things in the gnosis will be brought into the discussion from the innumerable arcane writings, and the rest will be from the works upon the entire range of divine matters, which the old compilers have collected into a book of limited dimensions. If, however, thou wouldst propose some philosophic question, we will determine it for thee according to the ancient tablets of Hermes, which Plato and Pythagoras, having studied thoroughly beforehand, combined together in philosophy. But questions that are foreign to the subject, or that are disputatious and exhibit a contentious disposition of mind, we shall tone down gently and aptly, or else show their impropriety. So far also as they go in the line of common way of thinking, we will try to discuss them in a familiar manner. Those likewise which require the experiences of the divine dramas. Okay, so what's that? Divine dramas. They were divine works or performances, exhibitions at the mystic rites. These were dramatic representations to prefigure experiences of a spiritual character. Okay, for an intelligent understanding we will, as far as it's possible, explain by words alone. But those which are likewise full of intellectual speculation will be shown to be effective for purifying from the earthly contamination. It is possible, however, to tell the signs of this which are worthy to be noted, And from these, both thou and those who are like thee in mind can be brought near to the very essence of things that have real being. So far, however, as they may be actually known through words, none of these matters will be left without a perfect demonstration, and in reference to everything we shall give thee carefully the proper explanation. Those which relate to divine matters we will answer as theologists, and those which pertain to theurgy we will explain theurgically. Those of a philosophic character we will search out with thee as philosophers, and such as extend to the primary causes we will bring forth into light, following the argument together according to first principles. Such, however, as pertain to morals or final results, we will determine properly according to ethical form, and other questions in like manner we will treat according to their proper place in the arrangement. We will now proceed to your questions. All right. You begin accordingly by saying, in the first place, it is to be taken for granted that there are gods. Speaking in this way is not right, for the inborn knowledge in respect to the gods is coexistent with our very being, and is superior to all judging and deciding beforehand. Indeed, it is pre-existent both to argument and demonstration, and is united interiorly from the beginning to its own divine cause, and is coexistent with the inherent longing and impulse of the soul to the good. So what I think what he's really saying here is that, first of all, everybody has their own individual experience with what they consider to be the gods, and this is like an inborn knowledge, and it's coexistent with our very being, and therefore it's above anybody else judging and deciding. And its existence is not based on just arguing about it and trying to demonstrate it for some critic. It's actually something that comes from within. It has its own divine cause, and it's coexistent with the inherent longing and impulse of our human souls to connect to something that is inherently good. So anyway, that's how I'm translating that. It's interesting, right? It keeps taking me back to, Satan. And he said, my wisdom is not separate from my heart. And I'm telling you, when I read that the first time, it was like fireworks going off in my head, because it's so true. And there it is again, this inherent longing and impulse of the soul to the good. If, however, we must speak truly, the conjoining to the divine nature is not knowing, for this is kept separate after a manner by an otherness. So there's a note here. It says, power and energy are thus distinguished from their result. Damaskios remarks that where there is not otherness, there will be no knowing. A union on conjunction, as of one to another, is superior to knowledge. I think that's very interesting. This is me commenting, okay? Because what that immediately makes me flash to is that, when you hit that sensation of knowingness, it totally transcends this knowledge, right? Like some of the smartest people are some of the dumbest. Haven't you ever noticed that? Yeah, they're it's almost like it gets in their way. Plato taught that man longs for the good and bears witness by his restlessness and disquietude that he instinctively desires it, and that he can find no rest and satisfaction in anything apart from the knowledge and participation with the supreme absolute good. Yeah, it's interesting, right? All right, so where did I leave off here? I'm going to start here. Prior to this knowing, however, which is as of one individual having knowledge of another, the intimate union, as in a single concept, is self-originated and indistinguishable. Hence, we ought to concede the point as though possibly it might not be granted, not to assume it as a matter of uncertainty, for it always existed simply in energy. Nor is it proper to put it to proof in this way, as though we had the authority to judge and reject, when we ourselves are encompassed in it, or rather filled by it, and the very selfhood which we possess in this knowing of the gods. I have, moreover, the same thing to say to thee in regard to the superior races which come next in order after the gods. I mean the demons, heroes, and uncontaminated souls. Really interesting. Okay, so there's a note there too. Let's look at it. Damaskios describes demons as tutelary spirits of a nature essentially divine. They were said to have charge of the oracles and worldly affairs generally. The heroes, or demigods, were a lower race in the order of emanation. The term denotes the son of a divinity with a human parent. Uncontaminated souls are such as are not impure from the attraction of the genesis or domain of phenomenal existence. As are such as are not impure. Okay, interesting. That was okay. For it's always necessary to bear in mind, respecting these subordinate races, that they have one. Now, I was just looking at another little. This is me interjecting, but I was just looking at another, taking another note from that, and actually, from another translation. Okay, I was looking at another translation, and they said, let's see if I can find it here real quick. Damn it, where'd it go? Okay, so anyway, he says that it actually goes, the list is actually like the immortal gods are honored first, as they are disposed by law, but he also they also comprehend angels and demons, and that actually both of them were considered divine kind of things. And then there's, in the last place, there's terrestrial demons. Such good men as transcend in virtue the rest of mankind. So he's talking about the heroes, the ones who are like demigods, right? And then after that, the good people. But yeah, anyway, yeah, slightly different there. But this is why I like to look at different translations, right? Let's see. Okay, for it's always necessary to bear in mind, respecting these subordinate races, that they have one defined form of essence. Also that we put aside from our conception of them the indefiniteness and instability which are incidental to the human constitution, and renounce the tendency to incline to the other side which arises from attempts to counterbalance the opposition of the arguments. For such a thing is foreign to the principles of reason and life, but is derived from secondary sources, such even as belong to the power and contrariness of the realm of generated existence. It is necessary, however, to treat of them as being of a uniform nature. Let it be admitted, then, that with the companions of the gods in the eternal region, there is the innate perception of them. Therefore, even as they have their being always after the same manner, so also the human soul is conjoined to them by knowledge, according to the same principles, never by any conjecture, opinion, or reasoning which has their beginning in time, pursuing the essence which is beyond all of these, but by pure and faultless intuitions which it receives out of eternity from the gods, being conjoined with them in these principles. So I'm listening to that and I'm thinking, all right, so yeah, it's we are actually conjoined to that indwelling God within, and we are part of that essence. We partake from that essence, and we get pure and faultless intuitions received out of that essence because we are conjoined with it, right? The God within. But at any rate, I'll go on here. Nevertheless, thou seemest to consider the knowing of divine beings to be the same as the knowing of other matters. and likewise that a point may be taken for granted from opposing arguments, as is usual in debates, but there is no such similarity, for the perceiving of them is absolutely distinct from everything of anti-ethic character. It is not made valid by being now conceded or by coming into existence, but on the other hand, it is a single concept and coexisted with the soul from eternity. I say such things to thee, therefore, in regard to the first principle in us, at which it is necessary for those to begin who would both speak and hear anything concerning the superior races or about themselves. Pretty interesting, right? Okay, so now we go to the second question, and he was talking about the superior races and their manifestations. Almost at the 30-minute mark here. Okay, so in what does a demon differ from a hero, or half-god, or from a soul? Is it in essence, in power, or in energy? What is the token, at the sacred rites, of the presence of a god, or an angel, or an archangel, or a demon, or of some archon, or a soul? For it's a common thing with the gods and demons alike, and with all the superior races, to speak boastfully and to project an unreal image into view. Hence, the race of the gods is thus made to seem to be in no respect superior to that of the demons. It's also acknowledged that ignorance and delusion in respect to the gods is irreligiousness and impurity, and that the superior knowledge in respect to them is holy and helpful, the former being the darkness of ignorance in regards to the things revered and beautiful, and the latter the light of knowledge. The former condition will cause human beings to be beset with every form of evil through ignorance and recklessness, but the latter is the source of everything beneficial. Okay, so let's see, that was question number 2. I'm going to jump down to his answer now. Okay. All right, so here's his answer. Then follows thy question, what are the peculiarities of the superior races by which they are differentiated from each other? If by peculiarities you mean differences as of species under the same genus, which are distinguished by opposite characteristics as rational and irrational under the head of animal, we by no means admit the existence of such differences in beings that neither have one common essence. Here's a note. Plato defines essence as that which has real being, and he describes it as colorless, formless, and intangible, visible only to the mind or the higher reason that guides the soul. So he's saying here, we by no means admit the existence of such differences in beings that neither have one common essence. So they're all individuals, I guess. Nor characteristics diverse from one another, nor have received an organization from a common source which is undefined and yet defines the peculiarity. If, however, you suppose the peculiarity to be a certain simple condition limited in itself, as in primary and secondary races which differ in their entire essence and in the whole genus, then your notion of the peculiarities is reasonable. And as I'm reading this, instead of saying thee and thy and so on, I am kind of putting it into more modern vernacular just for the ease of understanding, okay? For these peculiarities of beings that always exist will all be in some manner set apart, separate, and simple. Questioning, however, is going forward to little purpose, for it behooves us, first of all, to ascertain what the peculiarities are in regards to essence, then in regards to power, and so after that, what they are in regards to energy. But as thou hast now put the question in reference to certain peculiarities which distinguish them, you're speaking only of the peculiarities of energies, And hence, you are asking the difference in them in respect to the last things as mentioned, but you're passing over unnoticed without questioning the first. And, as relating to the elements of variableness, the most important. Moreover, there's something added in the same place in regard to active or passive motions. This is a classification not at all proper as relates to the superior races, for in none of them is there the contrast of active and passive, but certain of their energies are to be contemplated as unconditioned, unrestrained, and without relation to anything opposing. And hence, we do not admit in regard to them that there are such motions as active and passive in respect to the soul. For we do not concede self-motion from moving and being set in motion, but we suppose that there is a certain unique self-originating motion which is its very own, and not an aptitude derived from an outside source, taking it from action in itself and a passive condition by itself. Who then may admit, in respect to the races superior to the soul, that they are to be distinguished by the peculiarities of active and passive motions? Note, Plato bases upon this fact the immortality of the soul. The soul originates its own action and receptivity by volition. This volition is self-motion and is that quality of moral freedom which has placed human beings above and apart from the animal tribes. Continuing. Further, therefore, that expression which is added, or things consequent, is inconsistent with their nature. For in the case of those of composite nature, and of those that exist together with others, or in others, or that are encompassed by others, some are conceived of as leading, and others as following. Some as being themselves essences, and others as contingent upon essences. For there is an arrangement of them in regular order, and there intervenes unfriendliness and disagreement between them. But in regard to the superior races, they are all to be considered as self-subsisting. The perfect ones take rank as chiefs and are separate by themselves, and neither have their substance from others or in others. Thus, there's nothing about them that is consequent. In no respect, therefore, is their peculiarity characterized from these. And now, there occurs at the end of the question the natural distinction. The question is whether the essences are to be known by energies, physical motions, and things consequent everything. However, is to the contrary. For as the energies and motions made up by the actual substance of the essence, they would themselves likewise be dominant in regard their difference. If, however, the essences generate the energies, being themselves previously separate, and then they impart to the motions, energies, and things consequent that which constitutes the differences. This mode, therefore, is contrary to what is supposed in the present bunt to find the peculiarity. I'd have to read that a couple times. In short, however, whether thou imagines that there is one race of gods and one of demons, and in like manner of heroes or half-gods, and after the same course of things, of unbodied souls, or whether you suppose that there are many races in each category, you demand that the distinguishing of them shall be according to their peculiarities. For if you suppose each race to be a unit, the whole arrangement of divine orders according to the more perfect classification is overturned. However, they are defined by these according to race, as it may seem satisfactory, and there is not among them one common definition in relation to essence, except that those that are prior are distinguished from the inferior races. It's not possible to find out their common boundaries. And even if it should be possible, this very thing takes away their peculiarities. Hence, the object which is sought is not to be found in this way. So I'm looking, what I'm understanding from that, and I'm just making notes here, is what he's kind of saying is that these things cannot be really, put in a box and defined, right? Because that actually ruins it in a way. It actually takes away from them. They are more than that. Like, how can a human being really comprehend that which is, I don't know, beyond comprehension? Anyways, hence the object which is sought is not to be found in this way. He, however, will be able to define their peculiarities who reasons upon the analogous sameness in the higher orders, as, for example, with the many races among the gods, and again with those among the demons and the half-gods, and lastly with souls. Hence, it's been demonstrated by us, with this argument, what is the right course of the present investigation, its limitation, and how it's possible for it to be made. Okay, so there's some notes here. It says, in the Assyrian or Chaldean plan of divine orders, the following, it goes like this. 1, the intellectible gods. It says 2, the hyparchs or superior archons. 3, the archons. 4, the archangels. 5, the Azoni or unclassified who belong to no defined jurisdiction. 6, local genii. This arrangement is hinted at in part 8. Did I miss something here? Okay. All right. Okay, so we'll jump over to... Okay, we're going back to the questions. What is it that takes place in divination? For example, when we're asleep, we often come through dreams to a perception of things that are about to occur. We're not in an ecstasy full of commotion. The body lies at rest, yet we do not ourselves apprehend these things as clearly as when we are awake. In like manner may also come to the perception of the future through enthusiastic rapture and a divine impulse, when at the same time so thoroughly awake as to have the senses in full activity. Nevertheless, they by no means follow the matter closely, or at least they do not attend to it as closely as when in their ordinary condition, and so also certain others of these ecstasies become entheist or inspired when they hear cymbals, drums, or some choral chant. As, for example, those who are engaged in the Corybantic rites, those who are possessed at the Sabazian festivals, those who are celebrating the rites of the Divine Mother. Others also are inspired when drinking water. Others when sitting over cavities in the earth, like the women who deliver oracles at Delphi. Others are affected by vapor from the water. Others when standing in indented marks, like those who have been filled from an imperceptible inflowing of the divine phlerome. Others who understand themselves in other respects become inspired through the fancy, some taking darkness as accessory, others employing certain potions, and others depending on singing and magic figures. Some are affected by means of water, others by gazing on a wall, others by the hypthral air, and others by the sun, or in some other of the heavenly luminaries. Some have likewise established the technique of searching the future by means of the entrails of birds and stars. What, I ask, is the nature of divination, and what is its peculiar character? The diviners all say that they arrive at the foreknowledge of the future through gods or demons, and that it is not possible for others to have any inkling of it, only those who have command over the things to be. I dispute, therefore, whether the divine power is brought down to such subserviency to human beings as, for instance, not to hold aloof from any who are diviners with barley meal. So he's talking about, why in the hell would they be subservient to some peasant that's sitting out there with some barley meal, as opposed to, one of these oracles, right? Anyways, in regard, however, to the origins of the oracular art, it is to be doubted whether a god or angel or demon or some other such being is present at the manifestations or at the divinations or at any other of the sacred performances, as having been drawn hither through you by the necessities created by the invocations. Some are of opinion that the soul itself both utters and imagines these things, and that there are similar conditions of it which have been produced from little sparks. Others, that there's a certain mingled form of substance produced from our own soul and from the divine in breathing. Others, that the soul, through such activities, generates from itself a faculty of imagination in regard to the future, or else that the emanations from the realm of matter bring demons into existence through their inherent forces, especially when the emanations are derived from animals. And these conjectures are put forth with the following statements. 1, that during sleep, when we're not engaged with anything, we sometimes chance to obtain a perception of the future. And 2, that likewise, an evidence that a condition of the soul is a principal source of the art of divining is shown by the facts that the senses are held in check, fumes and invocations being employed for the purpose, and that by no means everybody, but only the more artless and young people are suitable for the purpose. 3, that likewise ecstasy or alienation of mind is a chief origin of the divining art. Also the mania which occurs in diseases, mental aberrations, abstinence from wine, suffusions of the body, fancies set in motion by morbid conditions or equivocal states of mind, such as may occur during abstinence and ecstasy, or apparitions got up by technical magic. And this is interesting. There's a note here and it says Goetia, or black magic. Interesting, hey? Apparitions got up by technical magic. So, yeah, no, that's really interesting. I'm going to have to think about that some more. Okay, that both the realm of nature, art, I have a feeling about it, but I can't put it into words right now. Okay. That both the realm of nature, art, and the feeling in things of common throughout the universe, as of the parts in one animal, contain foreshadowings of certain things with reference to others. Moreover, there are bodies so constituted as to be a forewarning from some to others. Examples of this kind are manifest by the things done, namely, that they who make the invocations at the rites, carry stones and herbs, tie sacred knots and unloose them, open places that are locked, and change the purposes of individuals by whom they are entertained, so that from being paltry, they are made worthy. They also, who are able to reproduce the mystic figures, are not to be held in low esteem, for they watch the course of the heavenly bodies and tell from the position and relation of one with another whether the oracular announcements of the ruling planet will be false or true, or whether the rites which have been performed will be to no purpose, or will be expressive or archaic, although no god or demon is drawn down to them. There are some, however, who suppose there is likewise the subject race of a tricky nature, artful and assuming all shapes, turning many ways, that impersonates gods and demons and souls of the dead like actors on the stage, and that through these everything that seems to be good or bad is possible. They are led to form this judgment because these subject spirits are not able to contribute anything really beneficial as relates to the soul, nor even to perceive such things. But, on the other hand, they ill-treat, deride, and often impede those who are returning to virtue. They are likewise full of conceit and take delight in vapors and sacrifices, because the begging priest with open mouth attempts in many ways to raise our expectations. So the Agurtis, this is from the notes, or begging priest, generally belong to the worship of Rhea, or Sibyl, the mother. He's frequently depicted in a most unfavorable light. Apuleius speaks of a company of these emasculated priests Let's see, they're also described in the Republic of Plato. They frequent the houses of the rich and persuade them that they possess a power granted by the gods to expiate by sacrifices and chants any unjust act that's been committed, and that they induce the gods by blandishments and magic rites to help them. They collect money in this way, and they also follow the selling of nostrums and the telling of fortunes. Wow. Okay. Let's see now. That was number 3, oracles and divination. So we're going to just quickly run down to the answer here. Okay. Let us next proceed with the answers one after another to the questions. Oops, sorry, wait. It says, let us next proceed with the answers one after another to the questions which have been asked. There is then the good, both that which is beyond essence and that which exists through essence. I'm speaking of that essence which is the most ancient and most to be revered, and which, as to, is incorporeal. Okay. It's a special peculiarity of the gods and is characteristic of all the races that are included with them, and hence not being divided from this, but existing in like manner, the same in them all. It preserves their peculiar distribution and arrangement. It's very interesting to me because I look at that and I'm going, So that which is beyond essence and which exists through essence, and most ancient, most to be revered, and is incorporeal. And yes, they are gods because each individual human person or soul has a connection to that God that's within, and so they are individual. Anyway, those are my notes. Okay. But with souls that are ruling over bodies, that are occupied with the care of them, and that are placed in order apart by themselves in the eternal regions, before the transition to generated existence, there is not present either the essence of the good or the cause or supreme principle of the good, which is prior to essence, but there comes from it a certain participation and habit of good, as we perceive that a sharing of beauty and virtue is very different from what we observe with human beings. For this is equivocal and becomes manifest in complex natures as soul thing acquired. And that's not spelled S-O-U-L, that's S-O-L-E, so they're saying there's one thing acquired. But the principle of goodness is established, unchangeable and perpetual in the souls. It never at any time goes away from itself, nor is it taken away by anything else. All right, I'm going to stop here because we're almost at the top of the hour. So we're leaving off at demons and heroes or half-gods. I know I didn't cover all of his answers, sorry about that, but yeah. People's attention span only goes for so long, right? Anyway, thanks for listening, and that was the first part of me reading this. So this is the Theurgia, also known as the Egyptian Mysteries, as the Mysteriis, and also the Mysteries of the Egyptians, Chaldeans, and Assyrians. Alrighty, so yeah, we'll see you back here later for part 2. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for being here. Bye for now.